Ever want to design a miniature city? Run a train through it and make everything move? Maybe you want to show young people how to build all that too. Today's guest wants to exchange ideas about all that. Listen in next to the K-12 Engineering Education Podcast. I'm Pius Wong. My guest this episode is Stacey Walthers Naffah, the president of Walthers, a global model railroading company based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I asked Stacey about STEAM learning in this hobby, her family business, and more. Ms. Stacey Walthers Naffah, thank you for joining the K-12 Engineering Education Podcast, especially in this time. I mean, we might as well address that we are talking during the time of COVID-19 and lots of other things happening. And I really appreciate you taking your time out to talk to me.
Well, it's really, really great to meet you, Pius. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you and to meet you and to talk to your listeners.
Thanks. Yeah. How are you doing in all of this?
You know what? We're actually doing surprisingly well, which is interesting. In some ways surprising, in some ways not. During these very unusual times, people are looking for ways to find respite and find productive activities and things to keep themselves occupied and ways to learn in new and unusual ways, or just to do something at home that keeps them feeling good. And our hobby is, I think, doing its part right now. So actually our business is pretty steady. And I think that those people who have always enjoyed our hobby are really enjoying it a lot right now and finding some great comfort and their usual normal life, can kind of keep on moving forward in their miniature worlds if the rest of the big world is a little bit out of whack.
Yeah. So we should probably talk more about that. You talked about your hobby. And so, Stacey, you're actually the president of a company that works in model railroading. I was wondering if you could introduce a little bit of yourself and your company.
Sure. So, I'm Stacey Walthers Naffah, and I have the pleasure and honor of being the fourth president of Walthers, and it is my family's business. So I just took over from my dad in September of 2018. However, I have been working in the family business for the last 11 years after a career outside of the family business. And we are a producer and distributor of model railroad equipment. So everything you could possibly need to create a great model railroad or a little miniature world. We either make product in our own branded product lines, or we supply and distribute and sell, over 200 lines of other people's stuff. So our branded line is Walthers, but we sell brands like Lionel and Bachman, which you might be familiar with if you've ever been around trains. And we sell to hobby shops, both in the U.S. and all over the globe. And we also sell direct to consumer. And we are also a publisher of what is pretty much the authority in the industry. It's a book called our reference book. It's over 1,000 pages, or right around 1,000 pages, that helps modelers with product and information to help them understand how to navigate and enjoy our hobby. So we've been around for 88 years, and we're located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and founded by my great-grandfather, who was an electrical engineer, and then my grandfather and my father came after him. And both of them are engineers as well. And my mom is an educator. So I have kind of I got a lot of connections to the topic that you are so interested and passionate about. And I would say that I'm actually pretty passionate about it too.
That's really awesome. You sound kind of like, Walthers sounds a little bit like the Amazon of model railroading in a way. You make stuff, but you distribute everything. Is that an accurate analogy?
I've never heard anyone call us that. And actually, we sell through Amazon too. But what's interesting about that is that actually we were one of the first people in our industry to have a website. I think it was launched back in 1997. So my dad did that. But we do a little bit of everything. It's an interesting it's an interesting industry. And then I I'm biased, but I would say it's a pretty interesting business within an interesting industry because we have our hands kind of in all aspects of it.
And I definitely need to ask you about the technical side of all that stuff, and I will shortly, but I want to know more about like this whole family business thing. That's kind of unique, I would say. I know that you said that your great grandfather, your grandfather, you have a history of engineering in your family. Are you an engineer yourself?
I am not trained to be an engineer. But it's interesting because I really did think about it before choosing my college, and then I wound up going in a different path. So I've got some, good hard wiring for that engineering stuff, and I spend a lot of time with a lot of engineering people. But I studied actually business or marketing and psychology when I was in undergrad. But then I did go get my master's. And studied actually one of the entrepreneurship. I studied family
Mhm.
business and some other things. So,
I didn't know that they had family business classes. That's interesting in
yeah,
business school.
actually, the school. So I went to Kellogg at Northwestern. They've got
Mhm.
a great family business practice there, and a lot of universities actually do have family business practices because there are a lot of family businesses in the world. However, getting to the fourth generation is pretty rare. So it's a special business, and it's pretty special to get to the place that we are, and it's a testament to the generations before me and for the care that we've put into it and that the team has put into it over time. There's a lot of love in this business.
So you must know, of course, about the history of your company and the industry. I'm curious how you have understood model railroading to have changed over time since when your company first started versus now.
There's a lot of changes, and I will admit, I'm not going to be the technical expert here, but I can speak broadly to the fact that, model trains have been made as toys since since there were trains, like the mid 1800s, but small electric motors around 1900 really made electric model trains possible. So by the 1920s, excuse me, adult hobbyists were using electric model trains to create their first model railroads and clubs began to form. And so, really, the fascination for early adult hobbyists was combining the high tech of their day with their interest in trains. And
Hmm.
so, we still see that today. So, obviously, the technology has evolved over time, and the interest in trains, might be varied based upon the people who are enjoying the hobby, but that's consistent over time. But there's been a lot of changes in between, but my great grandfather himself was an electrical engineer, as I said, and he actually started his business in the Depression when his other business was failing. And he
Hmm.
happened to have this interest in trains. And he also, so he was kind of puts in with, electrical stuff to make his railroad work well. And he started writing information that could help, or articles that would help other people enjoy model trains. And then people started writing to him and getting more information from him. And then he started making products. I don't know this to be 100% true, but I believe he might have written articles for Popular Science.
Hmm.
Anyways, the information and technology of the day to help enable creating these little miniature worlds was fundamental to the way we started. And we continue that to this day, although the technology has changed. And so now you can run your trains, digitally in the digital command control system. People are figuring out how to integrate Arduino technology. They're, running it off of their iPhones or their iPads, and some of them are still running it on standard power. There's a lot that people are doing with technology, and then there's a lot of real basic mechanical stuff that people are doing in creating the worlds that they do, just in the structure of it and the way that it works with the rails, or even just the design of the world itself or the cities that people are creating.
I'm getting a much better sense of all of this. I don't do model railroading myself, but I am an engineer. I like messing with stuff, putzing around with stuff sometimes, as you had said. Your great grandfather sounds like the type of person, if he were here today, he'd be on the internet forums talking about how to build different things. I don't know if you were here today, if you think that would be stuff he would do, trying to share information everywhere.
Yeah, I do think that. And he was real entrepreneurial, and he had a real, passion for photography and watching train. He was just a very curious person. And I think that that is something that's been consistent and has curious and always learning, continuous learner is definitely embedded in our family DNA. So I think that
Hmm.
that's what's propelled it, over 4 generations is that we're all kind of interested in how things work and we're all interested in solving problems. And so I think that that's something that has helped the business, and it also is very consistent with a lot of the benefits that you learn from this hobby.
You talked about, even though you're not an engineer, you definitely have an extensive business and an entrepreneurial background. The funny thing is that as engineers, the big trend today is to try to push more education in entrepreneurship and psychology into engineering education to really understand customers. So I did want to ask you, even, I mean, you probably know a lot about customers and your customers. How have your customers been changing over the years, say from even the 1920s all the way till now? Has it been the same group of people doing model railroading?
It's an interesting question. I think that that common denominator of being curious and wanting to build things and is you, that's a more of a psychographic than a demographic, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I think that that's probably a common denominator. I would say that the place that model trains has had in popular culture has changed tremendously over the years, right? So the technology available back in the 40s and the 50s, this was pretty high tech stuff, and you had trains in every window at department stores, and people actually shopped at department stores. Um, so I think that the competition for leisure time and the competition in terms of technology has accelerated over time. So I think that maybe there's been a shift away from the younger people,
Hmm.
at least that we maybe over the last 20 years, but I think that's changing now, and I want that to change. And frankly,
Mhm.
that's why I'm talking to you, and that's why I came back to the family business, because I see a huge opportunity. But I think that's more of a cultural shift. What I would say as a female is that I don't feel that we have as many female model railroaders as we could or should. And I do think that our industry has been, not that there are not female model railroaders, because there are, they're really, really talented ones. But I think that this has this perception of being kind of more of a quote unquote male hobby, which probably aligns pretty well with, the challenges that STEM education has been working on, with STEM and girls. So I think it's probably pretty well aligned there that it was more of a cultural thing that maybe made this more of a boy thing to do than a girl thing to do. So that's kind of my big picture statement is it's kind of that psychographics of curiosity I think is consistent. I do think that it's primarily male,
Hmm.
and I do think that that has some cultural reasons for being.
Yeah. You kind of reminded me that one of the things I had read before was there was like a little blog post on the National Science Teachers Association website about your education initiatives that you're introducing. Besides, like, noticing, I guess, a business opportunity, why is it even important for Walthers to be involved in education?
First, I have to say that when you're involved in your own family business and you're running it, you get to try to align your own personal passion points and your business. Like I said, my mom's an educator. I actually was a camp counselor. I studied psychology. I really, really love kids. I have 2 teenagers of my own, and frankly, I came back to the business when my son was 4, and he was really into trains, and I didn't really see kind of an invitation or a path for him that would have kept his interest. And then my daughter is 2 years younger than him, we've kind of been on this journey together as they've grown. I just see education as being a really lovely way to engage them, and then I also see it as a real benefit to educate in a hands-on way. I have 2 different learners in my household, and I would say that both of them can benefit from the applied learning of our hobby. There's a lot there, and I think that the more we engage kids and the more we engage them in the learning process in meaningful ways that meet their learning style and allows teachers to be really effective for the broad spectrum of kids that they've got in their classroom. I just think that's a public good. I think it's important. I can't think of anything more important than education, and just learning. The process of learning can help people on their path, whether they want to be engineers or whatever they want to be. Figuring out how to discern how to learn, I think, is really important. And I think we can help with that. So that gets me excited. Honestly, that's that somehow connecting education to our hobby just feels like the right thing to do and a good thing to do.
Yeah. How can we connect it to this hobby? I think this is the same question we could ask about like any hobby. I think I've had this discussion about video games, about Legos, about just lots of things. And I guess I've never had this conversation about model railroading. How can you teach someone with this? Do teachers already use your products or your information in their classrooms? Um, Basically, what examples have you heard of, or are you trying to create or push for connecting this hobby to education?
Yeah. Well, I will say that, 11 years ago when I came back to the business, I had already identified that STEM was a real trend and I could see it. And I just thought we fit, which was one of the reasons why I chose to leave the career I was in to come into this one. And I could see on the front end of that some of the really neat things that Lego was doing. So I really,
Mm,
really admire what Lego has done and how they've taken something that was perceived as a toy and just morphed it in so many productive ways and fun ways for educators and for kids. So I would say if there's a model in my head, I would say that, emulating something of, even a fraction of what Lego has been able to accomplish, I think would be really, really productive. Um, so I would say we're pretty nascent. I've definitely had this personal passion. I think there's probably a lot of people who are doing things on their own. In fact, I know that there are teachers who are probably doing things on their own. There are groups within, our, associations with our hobby that are doing things, but they're kind of inefficient or they're not centralized.
mhm.
I'm also the president of a nonprofit called the World's Greatest Hobby Organization, which is kind of the top companies in our model railroad industry, and it is an educational nonprofit. So I'd say that's a place that I've been spending the most time exploring the educational kind of outreach that we can do. And
Yeah.
I'm very proud to say that we actually did execute something finally last summer with our local science center. So that's Discovery World here in Milwaukee,
Is that like
Wisconsin.
a museum or something? Or
Yeah, it's a STEM center. It's a science and
okay,
technology center. It's a fantastic place where experiential learning takes place. So museum, if interactive, and
yeah,
they've got programming and they've got classrooms, that they're doing programming all year round with educators. Of course, right now that's changed, given COVID-19. So they're doing
yeah,
a lot of remote summer camps, but they're great thought leaders. And so I appreciate that my colleagues from this World's Greatest Hobby organization, who are all over the country, frankly, that they allowed me to kind of continue to work with this Discovery World group, which I had been developing a relationship with, I would say probably over the last 6 years, just trying to find the right fit, because they see the value in and alignment in STEM learning. And so what we executed with them is, and what I need and what we need as a hobby is, frankly, we need to connect with educators because we know our stuff. I know that kids could benefit from us, but we need the educators to translate it.
mm,
We know the educators know best how to manage a classroom, how to make lesson plans, and we know the stuff that we've got. So what Discovery World did is their education team developed a summer camp, and rather than calling it a model railroad summer camp, they actually called it Design Your City. So over the course of a week, they had middle school kids, and we worked together collaboratively, their educators and our team, and they came up with a curriculum. And we had 5 days of they started with planning the city themselves. They worked on a module that they completed over the course of the week, and that module was a small, I think it was like a 2x4 module, as I recall, and they had to work together on some hard skills and some soft skills. the soft skills of planning, learning about cities. Like, why did railroads even come through the city? How do you put buildings in what place based upon the infrastructure that's there? So anyways, they developed the curriculum, we had the materials, and we co-developed it, and we helped them execute it. The kids built building kits, they laid track, they put up scenery, they presented their modules to their parents at the end, and each one of them they were so proud, and I was so proud. And we hope to be able to reinvigorate and do that camp again at Discovery World. But the curriculum was designed so that it could be scaled out, so that it could be given to another science center or maybe another educator who might find that of interest. But from the Discovery World standpoint, they knew their folks who were coming to their camp best, and Design Your City was the way that they framed it, and the trains were almost secondary.
Right.
So anyways, that's one concrete example. And I've got a lot of other examples in my head that are kind of rattling around. But most importantly, I really would like to connect with educators and hear what their ideas are, and to surface the people who are doing good work in classrooms, because I recognize that the budgets are tight in schools, and this might not be something that they're thinking of, but I feel like there's probably a way we can really work together and collaborate for the benefit of all of us.
That's really awesome. So it sounds like, Stacey, it's kind of like an open call for people to contact you. Like, I don't want people to all of a sudden just flood Walthers with stuff. But okay, so you're looking for contact from after school programs,
Sure.
teachers, museum. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
Yeah, and actually, I do have I've been asked this by one other person, and so we have an email address that I would give to you, and if people
Yeah, sure.
want to earnestly send me their feedback. I know that we don't have all the ideas. Best ideas come from the people who are closest to the people you're trying to reach, right? So we have a email address called ideas@walthers.com. So I would recommend that would be the one that people would send their thoughts to.
Awesome. Ideas@walthers.com. I hope that some Texas teachers and other listeners who are hearing this can reach you. And actually, that curriculum that you had specified with Discovery World, is that out? Like, can people just go to a website or something and look at that?
It's not, because it was so new, and honestly, like
Mhm.
we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do next with it. And all the time that I thought I was going to be working on possibly figuring that out has been dedicated to figure out how to keep business moving forward in a pandemic.
Right. Yeah. Going back to that, I mean, I'm sure that that is one of the number one priorities. Like, you're not running a school. I'm sure, like, as an educator, I have to think about creating curriculum and all that stuff. So I'm sure that you can't focus on that all the time. Are you looking for any particular curriculum? You're just looking for ideas at this point because it's so new. It's not like you're targeting high schoolers or you're targeting young girls, or is there a specific mission, or you're just kind of like trying to see what you can do first?
I think that I want to come up with something that's easy for educators to grab onto and customize.
I see.
So, looking for people who have ideas on that vein, or if they have success stories that they're learning, or if they have questions for us to see how we might be able to help. Something that, and maybe I know you're going to ask me later about kind of all the different aspects of STEM that I think we cover, but
Yeah.
I think that there's probably enough questions out there that I'd be real interested to hear what they are, and then start, getting my team thinking over here about what we could do. And like I said, I do have a bunch of ideas, but I'd rather
Mhm.
co-develop or collaborate than push out. So we are not, actively sending anything out to teachers right now. I mean, I would say that talking to you is probably one of the first things I've done. The National Science Teacher Association
Mhm.
interview is another. So I think right now we're taking some time to just help make our case and say, I think we could be part of your learning journey and your teaching journey, and see where it goes from there.
Great. And let's go right into that question that I got to ask. What aspects of STEAM education do you think you can really advance with model railroading?
So I think the opportunity exists to advance all of them, and I would even add another letter in there. I'd add H. I don't know where the H goes. Maybe it's a silent H at the end or at the beginning.
Okay. What's
That
the
one
A?
is history. That's
Oh, of
history.
course. That makes a lot of sense. You don't have to
So
convince me of that.
yeah, so history, obviously, we have a lot of people who are really interested in what we do just based upon creating the world exactly as it was at a certain time. People are very particular about, the prototype railroad and how our little miniature version of that railroad looks exactly like what they saw running past them at a certain point in time. Of course, they also, see things running past them today, so you kind of have a living history of what's going on. I would say that's also kind of current events, how transportation exists in our world. You can actually see that in a miniature way, and you can. We've got containers and shipyards, and you
Mm,
can do intermodal. So, anyways, there's a lot of like richness of topic that you could go into on how the world works, and the history part of how our country actually really wouldn't be the country we have without the railroads. Anyway, so that's kind of silent H, and also public affairs and current events. But I think I would go to the M next. M is math, and I would just start with the fact that you take a big thing and you figure out how to put it down to scale, and that is learning
uh,
right there.
yeah.
You take a kid who doesn't really have interest in math and you show him a giant locomotive, and then you show him the miniature version and how you calculate how to get from one place to the next. That's pretty cool. So, and we have multiple scales in our industry. So, most of the product that we create and produce is in HO scale. Lionel, which people are pretty, familiar with, was really made famous. O scale, that was really popular in the 50s. But there's also G scale, which is what I've got around my Christmas tree. That's bigger than O scale. Then we've got Z scale that goes in your briefcase, and N scale, which is kind of a little bit bigger than that, and very
Mm,
popular in Japan, and for people who have smaller spaces. So, anyways, there's a richness of math, period. And then you can even go into the geometry of putting together the tracks
yeah.
in radiuses of curves, and you have to calculate that. So math is a big one. I think that science, you definitely have, electrical currents, you've got circuitry, you've got motion. Some of our products, they actually operate in scale speed. So
Oh,
that
okay. Yeah.
so that's
You could
cool.
do a lot of physics type modeling as well, I'm thinking.
Yeah. So like steam engine, even how a steam engine works, how did actually, I mean, that's not how it's actually working on your miniature railroad, but you have a lot of richness of topic just in these giant machines that people can
Right.
see, and how a diesel engine works differently than a steam engine, right? And how the mechanics of that work, you can see that, in the product, on the little rails. I think that, technology, I alluded to that earlier, that the way that people run their trains, you can do it with DC current, but you can also do it with DCC, digital command and control, where people are able to literally operate their railroad the way that the real railroad works if they want to.
Hmm.
So, like, people actually they can role play, like, I am the engineer, I am, the various, I am all of the different roles, and you don't lift up the train off of the track if you're this serious about your model of railroad. You are moving it, you are moving loads from one area to the next area, based upon very specific protocols, and it can get really, really complex if you want it to. And at the same time, you can just make it like run really fast or slow based upon how much power is actually meeting moving into the train itself based upon how you control it. We actually are launching a Wi-Fi controlled train set, and my kids were testing it for me yesterday.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like he's just sliding it back and forth on his iPhone, or you can go big on the DCC controller. So anyway, science is a big one. Tech, engineering, obviously you're learning. I just think this problem solving. I read your article. I thought that was so interesting about how engineering is about like problem solving and in the world. I think that you can do a lot of those things I described in maybe more the public affairs section or the current events. Um, you can really have a lot of fun there on how do you get the train from this low point to the high point, and can it
Mm.
carry 8 cars, can it carry 4 cars, like how, there's just a lot there that I think lends itself to creativity with educators. And then just construction, architecture, planning. I mean, usually the big model railroads that you see, and even the smaller ones, oftentimes people have to do carpentry to start, their base of their model railroad, and then they have to plan out where is the lake going to go, and where do the tracks go, and how would I build a mountain in miniature. There's some really cool construction. It's like taking your volcano project to the another level.
Yeah, totally. It's instead of a volcano, it's something that actually works and moves things around. And you're giving me
Yeah.
lots of ideas.
Yeah, and I would end with one that I think is really important for kids today, and I think it's soft skills. It goes back to like, I want the lake there, but you don't. How are we going to figure this out? Or I think that there's just a lot of in that planning process, which is what I liked about the Discovery World camp, and
Mhm.
what I've liked when actually my kids and I did a layout when they were a lot younger is I made them go and figure it out. They had to go make a plan, and then they had to navigate and negotiate their plan, and then they had to come back because I wasn't going to let them carve a hole in the foam that we had just driven all the way to Home Depot to get, like, until
Yeah.
they had a plan. So I think that there's cooperation, there's soft skills, there's the knowledge that one person's going to be great at scenery and one person might be great at the track laying, and somebody else might be great at the reason why that particular locomotive runs the way that it does. It just speaks to what I think our culture needs is this idea of teamwork and collaboration, and knowing that you don't have to be good at everything, but together when we come together with different skills, with a diverse set of skills, with a diverse set of people, we can actually create a really cool outcome.
Do you think that in bringing this hobby that has been celebrated in homes and informally, I guess, for a long time, do you think that bringing this hobby into an academic setting, you lose anything?
I don't know. Um,
It's like I don't not to like poo-poo the idea. I actually really love the ideas you're proposing. I'm just thinking about, well, the other hand is like if someone forces your kid to play the piano or whatever, maybe it won't be as enjoyable, you know? So I don't know. Is there any thought to that?
I hadn't actually thought about that. In my opinion, I think that you're going to capture somebody's imagination and you won't capture somebody else's. So I think that that's the job of, the educator. And if we're not casting a wide net, then that shame on us, especially a wide net that I think could do some good in the world. So I'm not worried about that. I
Mhm.
don't really need to be like the coolest thing. I really don't. I want to add value, and I want people to be able to be creative. Oh, excuse me, I completely forgot. In our STEAM thing, art is huge.
Oh,
People who
right.
are
Yeah.
creating these worlds, oh my gosh, the A is a giant thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I gave you the silent H and then forgot the A. So yeah, the artistry that people do with what the products we create is it's amazing to me that they could make that the product that comes out of our boxes look like a real miniature world. It's phenomenal. So anyways, I think creativity and giving people the opportunity to be creative is of value. And if somebody chooses to do it, um, then outside of the classroom, great. If they don't, no big deal. Hopefully it helps to teach people in a way that's a little less quote unquote eat your peas and a little bit more hands-on, and makes it an enriching and possibly fun experience.
Yeah. I think you're right. It is kind of up to the educator. That's where a lot of that comes in. That brings me to more thoughts. What obstacles do you think there are to bringing this hobby into more of the educational mainstream?
I guess I will tell you right now, it's lack of understanding of how to do that effectively.
Mhm.
I know that our school systems, are far less centralized than other parts of the world where there have been successful education programs executed. So, namely Japan. One of my colleagues, Hiroshi Kato, who owns Kato company out of Japan, he actually has been executing a contest with, I believe it's with high school students for many years now. And each high school, and he's got wild participation, really high participation. And you've got like 150 schools that all participate. They all create a module, or they have multiple teams within their school that create modules, and then they compete. And the winners, actually, we had some winners come over here to the US to a train show in Milwaukee, and they've also traveled to Germany. And it's so, anyhow, they've been able to move in an efficient manner just based on how their educational system works.
Hmm.
I'm a little I just know that's not how we work. So we would have to come up with something that's scalable to a point and that allows people to customize. I'd be, we have to figure out how to make it economical for the school and economical for us.
Sure. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that, some could argue that, somebody might say, we don't have the space for something like that. Well,
Hmm.
but if it was a 4x8 thing that just sat there kind of in the art room or the science room or some space where, it was just perpetually being worked on. Because I will tell you that that is a common thread amongst people who are engaged in our hobby. They always say the layout's never done. So as soon as they get it done, they tear something up and then they
Hmm.
start over again. So I don't know. I guess that's some of the feedback that I'm interested in is how could it work, or how could you see it working, and what are some of the obstacles that educators would have? Probably there's a fair number of people that say, I just don't know anything about it. So I think
Yeah.
for one, we're going to just work on, kind of opening the invitation up and kind of maybe, creating some awareness so that we can work together. We think of things in the long game over here. I mean, you do when you're an 88-year-old business. So I'd rather do something the right way and make it
Right.
durable and work with people who really know than to just kind of try to, and maybe we'll experiment too. So maybe we'll try some things and we'll come up with a solution or a couple solutions that work for various situations.
What you're saying reminds me of Lego situation. I mean, we even spoke about, well, you spoke about Lego earlier, their education division. I'm sure they work with educators to develop a lot of their products and their curriculum. I think they run into the exact same issues. I know for a fact that many teachers I've worked with, they have problems with Lego just because that can be expensive, or like physical space is hard to come by to just carry a giant box of Legos. Do you work with other organizations, not just Lego, but other companies with similar challenges to try to figure that stuff out?
Not yet, but I think we could. And I think that what I've always been interested in over the course of these 11 years, it's like I've always had this idea. It's just a matter of how do you execute it well. I've talked to, I'm on the board of our children's hospital here, so I talked to them about how we could possibly do something there. I've talked to the Boys and Girls Club. I've talked to the to the leaders of my camp that I used to work at. So um, I think that just the more data points and the more ways that you can think creatively about how it could work for someone, the more you understand their economics, the better solution you're going to come up with. So I think making it, reasonably affordable, making its footprint relatively small, or conversely, having some place that's really committed to this topic and then working with them to bring people to them. That frankly, I think is probably the biggest start that we can make. And Discovery World here in Milwaukee is taking a big step that way, or at least we were right before
Mhm.
COVID. We had a
Mhm, mhm.
beautiful, professionally built model railroad donated very generously by a gentleman who passed by his estate. And Discovery World had said yes to take this layout and actually put it in Discovery World, and then they would have programming that would actually be able to be developed around it. So get people interested, have programming where either it's through the summer camps or schools could come visit, but really preliminary conversations were happening. We needed to get that layout installed first, but it was supposed to get installed in April, and that has not exactly been a priority. So we'll have to see where we surface. But I think that that's also a way, like, so if you bring it to Boys and Girls Club or you bring it to your local science center and then educators can come to it, for me, that sounds like a way that it might help offset some of those concerns on cost and on real estate available in a school.
Okay. So I have to ask this question. So I have a friend who I used to work with here at the University of Texas when we were making educational curricula using products similar to yours. And he's really, really into model railroading. He took a job actually to go to a railroading museum in Maine and work there for a while. He is wondering if kids today are interested in model railroading, or maybe they're not interested now, but they're going to be interested. Um, and how could they get prepared for working in an industry like yours? Basically, I'm thinking of what kind of people work in your industry, and how could a kid get into it?
That is such a great question. I'm so glad to hear that you have a colleague who enjoys our hobby, and I'm excited to hear that he's able to enjoy it up at that museum in Maine. This is such a great question, and I love the fact that I'm being asked it now by him. But I love it even more that I got asked that same question by two young men who came to
Oh,
visit.
wow.
But who asked? They were both 15 years old. They both were completely independent of one another, and probably about 6 months ago, each reached out to me so that they could get a tour to figure out that exact question. And what I told them is that I think they should study the things that they're interested in. And we have all sorts of jobs here at Walthers. So we are running a business that has a sales department. We have a new product development department that comes up with products. We have a marketing department. We have a distribution center. We have an operations department. So whatever a person is interested in, just know that our businesses work like other people's businesses. And so if you want to be in this environment, do the thing that you think you're best at. If you're particularly interested in like actually designing the trains, then I think you do need to go get some engineer. We do have some, product engineers here who are figuring out how to translate the big product into the little, into our models. And they have CAD backgrounds, they're doing design, SolidWorks, some of these things that you need to be able to create the models that we have here. And then we've got a lot of people who are enthusiasts, but they also happen to have a great sales background, or they work in our purchasing department. And then we have a whole bunch of people who aren't particularly interested in the hobby, but they still love to work here because we're a good place to work. I think that kids are interested in model trains. I think that there's a neat resurgence that's happening around the teenagers, because I think that their ability to self-serve on YouTube and get information and find things that are unique. They probably were in a Lego robotics class or something like that. I do think that we have a sweet spot of people who are interested. And I even had one of these young men actually volunteered to work a trade show for us right before we all kind of went into quarantine.
Wow.
We had a Silas come. He came to visit us and he came to work for us, and he's an expert. He is not a beginner. He knows his stuff, and he's in a railroad club, and he's trying to invite the rest of his friends, trying to start one at his school. So I believe that there are kids who are interested, and I think that if we open up the invitation to more, that more could become interested.
That's really cool. And that's just another idea, a railroad club. If you're in high school or something, that would be perfect.
And you know what? There used to be railroad clubs all over the place. So at school, so the Milwaukee School of Engineering had one. MIT had one. I believe that other colleges have had them. So getting them into junior highs or maybe or younger, I think could be fantastic. And clubs are a huge part of our hobby right now for adults. I mean, people connect with each other through their clubs, and especially if you have a real estate problem and you can't actually put a layout in your house, or you don't want to, people actually just build at their club.
So, Stacey, how would someone in general learn more about Walthers and the industry? Do they have to be in Milwaukee?
No, we sell. We're global. So, I mean, we would love to have you visit us, but you can follow our social media, and we are taking some efforts to invite new people in on our social media, especially as we have got a contest called the National Model Railroad Build Off that's kind of closing down entries right now, or pretty soon, but it's a way of people getting involved, maybe in a small way if they're not quite sure. So social media. So we're on Instagram, Facebook. Our website is walthers.com. We usually, when we don't have a pandemic, go to shows, and lots of shows that are dedicated to bringing in newcomers. So you could connect with us there. But I think that our website and our social is probably the best and safest way to do so right now.
Yeah. All
And
right.
we're also, I have to say, we're also very proud to sell into a lot of local hobby shops. So if you have a hobby
All
shop in
right.
your area, you probably will see our product there. So you should go to your local, support local retail. If you don't want to come to our website, or if you really want to go and touch something and talk to somebody, go to your hobby shop because they know a lot.
Stacey Walthers Naffah, thank you so much for speaking here, and I hope that you stay safe, of course, and we'll learn more about your educational programs as the future unfolds.
Thanks so much, Pius. It was really a pleasure to be with you today and to meet you.
Thanks, likewise. That was Stacey Walthers Naffah, president of Walthers. Check the show notes for how to reach out to her and for links to other topics mentioned here. The K-12 Engineering Education Podcast is sponsored by my studio, Pios Labs in Austin, Texas, and also by the Engineer's Guide to Improv and Art Games, available through Amazon and other booksellers. The show is also made possible by stupendous individuals donating to the show on Patreon. You can help continue the podcast by donating online too. Just check out patreon.com/PiosLabs. Visit the podcast website for show notes, links, transcripts, and more. Go to k12engineering.net. That's k12engineering.net. Thanks for donating. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and tune in next time.